Don't you just love teenagers? Well, if you have teenagers, then of course you do, but we all know it's not easy. The teenage years can be full of rebellion, assertiveness, questionable decisions, and dealing with their continual provoking of authority and testing boundaries. But it's a stage that can be very rewarding once your child has learned how to deal with responsibilities and started taking charge of their own lives. In this video, I want to share a couple of key tips from my practice as a clinical psychologist, as well from my own experience as being a parent. So let's get started. Being a parent of a teenager can be both rewarding and so challenging. They're looking for more autonomy and independence, and we are struggling with how much to give them. It's important to understand that adolescence can be difficult for them too. For several of my kids, I'd even say that adolescence was traumatic. It was a time of navigating friends, rejections, romance, schoolwork, and family responsibilities. It's also often a time of intense, turbulent emotions. But there's a few things you can do to help them navigate their emotions. Let me illustrate this with two simple stories. My son-in-law is a brilliant computer programmer. When COVID first came in the early 2020, he had to change to working remotely. Well, this is a young man who just loves to be around people. He loves to collaborate with people. And it was really hard for him to be separated by himself all day in front of his computer. So he and his colleagues did the simplest of things. They would get on Zoom and just work together. It wasn't for a meeting. It wasn't to necessarily even talk to each other or have conversations. They just sort of wanted to sit by each other and work together. And it made a big difference for him because he just needed some kind of interpersonal connection. I'll tell you another story about my son. He hates schoolwork. School's hard for him. It was hard for me too, so I can relate. I mean, he really hates homework. So sometimes I'll just spend my evenings just sitting next to him doing my own thing, doing my own work. And we don't talk much, but sometimes we'll just be together for over an hour just doing our work together. Now, my boy is a pretty physical kid. He's a hugger, he's affectionate. So every once in a while, I'll just kind of reach over and I'll pat his back or I'll give him a quick hug. And he'll do the same thing back to me. He'll reach over, he'll rub my back, he'll pat my back, he'll come over. Sometimes he'll literally will get up and come over for a hug in the middle of doing his homework. There's just something about this physical presence and physical interaction that actually helps regulate his emotions. So when he's frustrated, it helps him feel calmer. And it really helps him feel calm when he's doing things that he dislikes, like homework. My whole point is that navigating adolescence is tough for these kids. And so keeping our connections tight and close with them will really help them with their own emotion regulation. Another thing I do that I think really helps my kids is that I made it a goal to become a really good listener. I am somebody who is personally very easily distracted, but I wanted them to feel like that when we're talking together, I'm 100% focused on them. Let me give you another really simple example, and I just share this with you because it doesn't have to be anything big that you do. Just determine to be a good listener, and it'll have a huge impact on your relationship with them and actually help them feel calm in their lives. But before I share this other example, I just want to thank you for watching this video. Are you also struggling to communicate with your child or to discipline them effectively? None of us were ever handed a manual when our kids were born with all the rules and things that we should do and things we shouldn't do. We just learned by trial and error. And this channel is all about using my system of correcting and connecting to build a strong, trusting relationship with your child. If that's the kind of thing you want to know more about, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share it with any friends you think would benefit. Now let's get back to this video. Let me tell you another story about my son and his skateboard. A few Christmases ago, he was admiring this skateboard that his older sister had given him for Christmas. He had just broken his leg in a skiing accident, and so all he could really do was admire it. He couldn't get on it. And this skateboard was really quite the gift. It was a lot more expensive than the gifts that she would typically give him. Well, now it's later in the day and all the hoopla from opening presents had died down, and Brian is just sitting there sort of looking at and admiring his skateboard. He's turning it around in his hands, and he's just so excited to have this. And he says, Dad, come check this out. And so I come over and he starts telling me all the nitty-gritty details. So the wheels do this, the trucks do that, and the board is made of this material. And to be honest, I am not at all interested, but it was important to him. So I decided to just suck it up and just listen to him. I also decided I was going to do an experiment. Without him seeing me do this, I started a little timer on my phone because I wanted to see how long he was going to talk. And during this time, I was going to put all my focus on him. and what he wanted to tell me. He was going to give me all the details, things that he was excited about and things that I actually cared nothing about. But I faked it, and I listened while looking directly at him. And I even asked him a lot of questions about, things he was telling me about. Eventually we were done, and he was clearly satisfied that someone was interested in listening to him go on and on about his skateboard. How long did this take? To me, it felt like an eternity. I looked down, it took 120 seconds. We were talking for 2 minutes, and we had this little meaningful interaction. Now, this is a small thing, and if I hadn't done it, it wouldn't have mattered. But when you do these kinds of things over time, these little experiences become meaningful. One thing that really stood out to me after I had this 2-minute experience with him was that I watched he sighed like he was relaxed and he just looked satisfied. And I think for him, it was just nice for someone to hear him and be with him, even over something small like skateboard parts. So my challenge for you is just remember that being a teenager is not a piece of cake for them either. And you can help them by just connecting with them in small ways. That can be as easy as sitting next to them or being near them, not talking, just being there and becoming really good at listening. I've spent the last 25 years as a clinical psychologist, and I work primarily with children, adolescents, young adults, and their families. I created the Correct and Connect system that helps parents become much more effective at bonding with their kids and positively influencing them. This system is completely unique and highly effective, and I've seen how beneficial this has been in my own family and in many others. Well, if you think my experience and knowledge could be interesting or useful to your audience, then I'd love to connect with you about sharing it with them. I'm available to be interviewed for podcasts, live streams, media podcasts, written publications, or any other forms of relevant media. Just go to drtoddtalks.com and register your interest today, or just click the link in the video description below.